You're listening to the Spotless Podcast, where cleanliness is always next to podliness. Now, here are your hosts, Hannah Brooks Olson and Andrew Walsh.
We have a period of time every year here in the Northwest. I don't know if other places have this because, candidly, I've never lived anywhere else but in the Pacific Northwest. And we call it Fool's Spring. And it's the thing that happens in what is technically late winter. And it makes you think maybe winter is over. And if you think winter is over, well, you are a dumb idiot. Because it's not. And we're in it right now. It's early March. And it's still definitely winter. But boy, it looks and feels and smells like spring out there. And it is taking everything in my power to not go out there and do some honest to God, like spring things. But I know that they could just all be ruined because there's still a chance that it could snow or hail or do all kinds of wintry things.
I take issue with this entire setup.
Oh, okay.
Here's the deal. I come from a place where winters are real. And when you wait for the bus, you think, I hope the bus gets here quickly or death gets here quickly, as long as one of them gets here quickly, because it is awful to be outside. Talk about places like Cleveland, talk about places like New Hampshire at times. Then you move to a place like the Pacific Northwest, where the winters are so mild that the only thing people can complain about is how dark it is and a little bit of rain. And I just think, my God, it's so nice here. Then you get to late January. January, to me, the heart of winter. You get to late January, and you get a stretch of like a few beautiful days. And somebody like me is like, how wonderful that we have wonderful weather in January. And I go online, and I just see everybody complaining about, it's not going to last. Oh, it's just a fool's spring. I'm like, could you just enjoy the nice weather instead of trying to make it seem like you're a victim of bad weather in the Pacific Northwest?
Okay, but 2 words.
Fuck off.
Atmospheric river.
Bomb cyclone.
We just had so much rain and wind in 2 days. There were recycling bins just careening down our street.
It's fun for the bins, though.
They looked like they were having an absolute whale of a time.
Yeah, they were like, this is our time.
The last time I saw garbage having that much fun, it was January 6th.
Wrap the show here. I feel like you were set up for that joke.
I didn't. I just came up with that.
No, I know it's wonderful, but you know when people are prepping to go on a late night talk show, they're like, "Set me up for this anecdote." I felt like that was a really well crafted joke. No, I realize I'm coming off as a crank. I was talking about this on a KUW podcast. I'm like, nobody wants to be the guy. Oh, so you were set
up for it. I didn't realize I had set you up for it.
No. I meant your January 6th joke. I thought that was great, but no, I've been lately more. See, here's the deal. I get really, I really, as I said the other day, my most toxic trait is complaining about Seattle weather, which is really, it becomes a real snake eating its tail situation of grumpiness. But I'm being a little bit arch there. People can have their feelings, and I know that people who need sunlight and daylight to just help their mental health, it's a real thing. I don't want to be dismissive about the whole thing. And it's a really unfun look to be like the guy who comes in the room and is like, you guys all complain too much or whatever. But
I'm just speaking from experience that I know that I'm the dumb idiot, though, who will have a day like today. We're recording this. It's March 1st. It's gorgeous outside. What I want to do is what we discussed on our last show. I desperately want to go outside and clean our outdoor rug, and I want to plant my first round of seeds, and I want to hose down our, sooty, disgusting, gross winter filthed garage door, and I want to sweep up our driveway, and I want to do all the things that you do at the end of winter. But I have been burned so many times thinking, oh, we're going to be getting into springtime, and now these are worthwhile pursuits, because almost certainly they will not be refilthed. And then almost it's like going to get your car washed, and and then it will immediately, not only will it rain, we might still for some godforsaken reason get snow, and then I will both get road ice and dirt and sand all back on it, and it will just all be for naught. I just know, like, as I look outside and it's so pretty out, and I want to go outside and give my aluminum garden beds a scrub down because they've gotten, leaf mush and mud and a little bit of moss on them. I want to give them a little wash. And then I just know as soon as I do it, we're going to have some sort of weather event or situation that occurs that makes them unbelievably grotesque again between now and the dry season.
Now, one way of framing this, though, in all seriousness, not to be argumentative, but is maybe it's a good exercise to think about, like, yeah, but what are the things that I can take advantage of this weather to do that won't be undone by worse weather? Because I will say, just sort of on a whim, I think it was 2 nights ago, the weather is starting to turn nice again. And so I've been complaining on this show about the little stairwell, this little kind of basement stairwell that gets it's an outdoor stairwell that gets pretty, like, cruddy in the wintertime. It collects a lot of leaves and a lot of those, like, little evergreen droppings, that then get tracked all over the house. And it's just a total mess. And I have my little like doormat outside that gets really nasty during the winter. And the other day was just a nice dry night, and like kind of on a whim, I was like, oh, I can just sweep this right now. Like, no, it's not going to stay clean forever, and more winter may come, and maybe I'll give it another sweep in the spring. But it has been so great. I took advantage of this little moment and cleaned out the stairwell. I didn't totally hose down the doormat, but I could do that today on a nice day, and I don't feel like, oh, I wasted my time doing that, as opposed to other things you mentioned, which is like, well, certainly don't plant your seeds too early, or the things that, or get your big outdoor rug totally clean just to get ruined again. But maybe people can take inventory in their own lives and be like, well, what won't be totally undone if it rains again?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, is sort of like, what are those midway point, the things that more bad weather, and the things, because it's like, it's the weather, but it's also the things that come with it, right? It's, de-icer, it's like road salt or sand, it's, which might get kicked up into your, onto your car, or that you track into your house, right? Because that's the other thing, is like what winter weather does to the inside of your house. Like, I'm still going to mop my floors, but I might not do the big mop and wax until I know we're no longer tracking mud into the house every single day, right?
Yes.
And so that's a good point, is what can we do that is sort of either less impacted by the weather, or that is easier to do when it's nice out but is not impacted by the weather. So you always talk about like cleaning out your car. I'm probably going to do a car clean out. I think that's a really good one to do while it's nice out. I'm also going to do some things that I'm going to clean from inside the house that I like to take outside, like beating some of the inside rugs. Probably gonna I have some like decorative pillows that are nice to just shake out outside and give a little sprucing. Maybe do a little vacuuming. It's nice to take the hand vac outside with them and give them a vacuum outside. So yeah, I think that's a good idea, making a list of things that are weather dependent, which also for me, for my own personal mental health proclivities, it's nice to have things that are dependent on good weather, because it makes me more likely to do them when it's nice out. Because if I don't do them now, when I have to do them now, it gives me a sort of a deadline, which is helpful for me, but is not helpful for everyone. But if you are a person for whom that is helpful, it can be nice to have that little push.
I have another sort of take on that. I think maybe, I don't know, I think it's somewhat related. I was telling Vives the other day, it might have been last Saturday. You and I didn't have a recording scheduled, and it was just a weird day where I didn't have anything at all on my schedule. I'm like, oh, it's just a Saturday. And I was like, oh, I should do something. And it was like pouring rain. I think it was during that, before this nice weather came around, we had that terrible weather that you described. And it was like super rainy. And I was like, oh, I guess I can't go outside. I was like, you know what? Oh, that's right. And I didn't have a car either. Genevieve was using the car. And I was like, well, I could walk to the grocery store. I could do that. I'm just like, then I looked out the window. I'm like, it's pouring rain, not drizzle, but pouring rain. I'm like, you know what? Then I guess I got to just go lay down and read The Count of Monte Cristo, which I'm still only 76% of the way through, even though I've been reading it apparently my entire adult life. It's a very long book.
It's not a quick read either.
It is not a quick read.
It is both long and slow.
And I'm reading the unabridged version. I won't repeat the story here, but I've gone into great detail on TVTL about how the only reason I'm reading it is because I found a version of it in the free library, in one of those little neighborhood free libraries that are around town. And so I grabbed it and I'm like, I'll read this. But then I downloaded the digital version for like $5 or something. I'm like, at night, I don't like to read with the light on or whatever. So then I started reading the digital version. And then, I don't know, and I was like, I cannot believe I cannot get through this book. I cannot get through this book. How is it so slow? And then I picked up the book that I had grabbed off the shelf, and I realized, oh, this thing is super abridged. It's already bigger than the Bible, but the physical copy I have is only like literally a third of the whole book. Like every other chapter or every like couple of chapters are just skipped over. I'm like, I am going to be reading this until I'm dead. I also have a very unhealthy diet, so that's working in favor of that.
See, I thought you were going to say that a witch had cursed you into reading it for all eternity, and that would have made just as much sense.
Possibly.
It's wild that we make high schoolers read that book.
Do we?
Yes, like sometimes in high school people read that book, which is I don't know how. There's no way. I mean, I think there's just no way.
Yeah. I was going to make, what? Every conversation I have, it makes me want to make a cutting, or at least an attempt at a cutting remark about the current state of the world, but I need to stay away from that. So I'll try to finish my thought.
I didn't.
And say that in that moment of me like saying, hey, I'm going to take advantage of this bad weather just to like sit on my ass today, that's fine. But then I also started thinking, wait a second, Vives and I have a couple of indoor projects we need to do. Like, I don't think I've mentioned this to you, but like our kitchen floor is some pretty cheapo linoleum that's been around forever. It probably wasn't great when it was put in. It's definitely not great right now. When they installed our stove, they moved some appliances and ended up like kind of gouging it in places that makes it even more untenable. Or maybe less tenable. But anyway, so Genevieve and I, as just a temporary solution for, I don't know how much, but instead of getting a whole new flooring system put in, we bought these things you can put on top. Have you heard about it? It kind of looks like good flooring, but you can just stick it on top of the other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we got some of that we like a lot better, some kind of black and white. It's going to be a better design. It's going to be very clean. But I said to Vives, you know what? As I was sitting on my butt reading The Count of Monte Cristo, it occurred to me, we should be doing those inside projects now, because the second the weather is permanently like it is outside my window right now, which is I see the sun coming through and it makes me want to go outside and like clean the garage or mow the lawn or whatever. Once that cycle starts, we're not going to want to be inside on our hands and knees installing temporary flooring.
So you didn't do it then?
So no, we didn't do it that day, but we do have it scheduled for next Saturday. Next Saturday is our installing of or whatever the word would be, laying of the temporary flooring. I have to say temporary because if I say we're laying flooring, it sounds like I'm more advanced in my skills than I actually am. I want to make this very clear. I believe it's stick-a-mons.
I will be very curious to hear how this goes, because I know people are using that like peel and stick flooring for a lot of things besides the floor.
Like backsplashes maybe?
Yes. Or I saw someone using it recently for their windowsill ledges that they were peeling and sort of folding it over, specifically because they have a dog who likes to look out the window, I have. Yes. So Lola has clawed the ever-loving shit out of our window ledge. And I sanded and painted it over once, and then she immediately clawed it right back up. And so I have been wanting to do something with it. I don't like the little plastic claw ledges that you can get. I think they just like look yucky, and I don't. She's got a lot of force behind her. I don't think they're going to stay on. I don't like the idea of it. And so this is an idea that I was thinking about doing, but as we've talked about, like getting things, you know, even over the 50-yard line project-wise in this house can be a challenge. And so I'll be curious to hear how your experience is. But the other thing that I was thinking about because you just reminded me, was we had talked on the last pod about painting and thinking about like weather dependent chores. And we were talking about how we want to paint a couple of different places, but one is the downstairs of our house where I record. So I'm going to turn my camera real quick. This blue wall for certain. That's the
How would you describe that blue for the listeners who can't see it?
It's like a dark robin's egg. It's a robin's egg blue. I don't like it. We maybe want to put a wallpaper on that wall, but then that gets us into the fight of whether or not we should hire someone to put it on, which I am of course against, and Keith is very much pro. I think the idea of paying someone to put wallpaper up is unreasonable. He thinks it's necessary. So that's
because wallpaper can be very finicky wallpaper can be very finicky if it's not done like perfectly, and that's sort of from the fella who hangs his sweatpants out to dry so that they get perfect lines. That's kind of where that's coming from.
That's precisely correct.
Okay. Yes.
I think the idea of paying someone to come in to hang wallpaper on one single wall of a guest room, it feels like a lot of, one, extra effort, and two, money that just seems unnecessary.
I almost wonder if somebody would do it for just one wall, honestly. You know how they say no job too big, no job too small? When I was a kid, that didn't make sense to me. What do you mean no job too small? Everybody likes small jobs. Turns out that's not true, because I asked somebody if they would just take care of our back hedges, which are like majorly out of control, but a very small chunk of our hedges. I'm like, I'll get the rest. Could you guys just do that? And he straight up told me, he's like, we're not coming out here just to do one small bit of your hedges.
Yeah. We've gotten that answer on several contracting projects we've tried to do around our house.
Like when Keith tried to hire somebody to make coffee in the morning.
Well, no, that was easy to get on TaskRabbit. Although that guy's very weird. But we have that on our calendar for like basically as a floating date of the next time there are 4 straight days of nice weather, like that we both have off, so that when we are doing it, we can have the windows open because we're doing inside painting.
Oh, okay.
And so that's the thing, is because we're going to be doing this inside painting, because it's this room has the blue, and then outside of this room in the rest of the finished basement also has the blue, and we want to paint over the whole thing. And eventually, because this finished basement, it has a one complete room, has a bathroom, and then it has like kind of a big open space. And eventually we want to turn the rest of the basement into more of a, it's more like yours, but it's actually quite a bit like yours, where there's sort of a full area that we want to have sort of be like a TV area. He's going to put his video game systems down here and maybe some other things. We're going to put a couch down here that I assure you Lola will be glued to. Once we put a couch down here, I don't know that we're ever going to see her upstairs, because she is obsessed with downstairs. She loves to just...
That's such a big turnaround from when she was brand new. Remember, she didn't want to come in the basement.
No, and she loves it. She hangs out on this bed. She hangs out in the big open area. She'll just play. She has toys down here that are just her downstairs toys. And so I think she'll really like it to just hang out down here. But so one of the first steps, though, is painting. But it's one of those things that it has to be nice outside to do, because like it is really hard to paint an inside space in the Northwest during you would think during a rainy time would actually be a great time to paint inside. But if you want to open the windows for paint fumes and you have sideways rain, you kind of can't have the windows open for that.
You know what that reminds me? I was thinking about our last big painting project. It was a couple of years ago now, but it was when we first moved into this house. Like I had to totally repaint like the laundry room area, and Genevieve repainted, I think, parts of the kitchen, or maybe even the whole kitchen. But it was... It reminds me that it was during spring training season in baseball, which we're in right now.
Yeah, we are.
I don't have any specific projects, like big projects, except for maybe this big floor project that we'll do next weekend. I don't know if Genevieve will let me listen to the baseball game while we do that. Easy answer, probably no. But there's something about that. I feel like in my life there have been big projects that I've done that I can associate with specific spring trainings. I don't know if you were similar that way. Like, I remember moving out of LA, spring training was just beginning, so I was streaming the Mariners spring training when I was packing up boxes or whatever, and then moving into this house and then doing this big painting project. Like, I can just remember, I don't know, I have a weird connection to like where I heard something and what I was doing at the time that I heard it. For some reason, I don't know why, my brain just works that way.
Oh, yeah.
But it's kind of a special time. I feel like the spring, even without the specific baseball connection here, I feel like it's just a special time to do projects, honestly.
It really is. I think, like we talked about last week, that such a big part of spring cleaning is the ability to like open the windows and to come and go. You know, the ability to come inside and go outside with stuff. And so things like moving tools in and out, moving equipment, you know, if you're working with something like paint or wood, like it just is really hard to do a lot of cleaning and repair projects if it is pouring rain outside.
Yeah.
If it feels oppressive like that, if you have bad weather. But so I think there is something about spring just feeling more opportune, and then also feeling as though you have more inspiration to do it, right? You've kind of spent all winter staring at the things you don't like.
Yeah. Yeah, and potentially even just like you say, from a mental perspective, like we just sort of get into more of a hibernation, and then it gets to this time of year, things are piling up, you're starting to get antsy, and then the weather really does have a huge effect on your mood. I'm going to switch gears here for 1 second, if you don't mind, and that's going to let people know how they can get a hold of us. If they want to call our voicemail line, let us know projects you're working on, or if you have a question about how to clean something, or if you want to tell us a good way to clean something, give our Spotline a call. As Hannah says, the phone number is 508-469-9274. That's 508-HOW-WASH is how you spell that. You can also email us. You can record one of those little voice memos like listener Carol did. We'll be hearing from Carol later in the show. And you can email us, spotlesspod@gmail.com. And we're on Instagram and now on YouTube too, right? How's the old YouTube project going?
It's going. I'm learning. I haven't done a lot with YouTube other than sort of for work type stuff. I haven't done a lot of personal work on YouTube. So I'm kind of figuring out how it goes. So I appreciate everybody who has gotten on at Spotless Pod to follow us and interact with us and tell us what you think. And
I got a notification that somebody named Dan Olson is following us on YouTube now.
Who could that be?
I don't know. Sounds like a cop.
Sounds like a cop. Must be. But you can follow us and then be notified when we upload. And I apologize if you got a billion notifications because I was having trouble uploading because we have such high quality videos. They were just too exceptional for YouTube to handle. So the first few times I uploaded our video last week, YouTube could only handle 10 minutes of it, and because YouTube support is YouTube useless, it was very hard to figure out why that was.
That's funny. That's right, because I'm on Blue Sky as well. Personally, I think I don't know what. If I'm going to mention I'm on Blue Sky, do I have to know what my name is? I think I'm just like Andrew Walsh on Blue Sky or whatever.
Probably.
You can find me. But I posted you had it up on YouTube, and I was like, oh, look, we're on YouTube now. And I had it up there. And then nobody was engaging with it. I'm like, what the heck? We're very popular. And then I realized, oh, it was already pulled down. And I just had this floating ghost link up there.
Yeah, that's because the first one that I didn't realize was only 10 minutes of an hour-long pod because it was too big. And YouTube didn't bother to tell me that or do anything about it. They just put up the first 10 minutes. So that was cool.
I guess I'm just at Walsh on Blue Sky. I was on pretty early. All right. So anyway, that's where we are.
And you really beat both Matt's Walsh and a couple of others.
Yeah, and the Andrew Walsh, who was the soccer player in the 2000s. I used to have a Google News alert out on my own name. Never got anything related to me at all.
I bet
got
not.
a bunch of updates about the soccer player in the UK, and now I get a lot of updates from some guy who writes little blurbs about pop culture for some Ireland newspaper or website. Anyway, we are pretty far afield of what we're supposed to be doing here. I did want to say that coming up on the show, we're going to hear from some listeners, more people weighing in on what do we call it? The things that you purposely don't clean a lot so that they're super dirty when you finally clean them, and then it's super satisfying. I got some more people offering up examples of that. And as I was doing a little chore around the house this week, it occurred to me, I know I have the perfect example of this in my life. Something that I like to let it go a little bit too long so that it's so satisfying when I finally take care of it, except the one I'm going to offer up is a little bit controversial, a little bit dangerous. Are you ready to walk on the wild side?
No,
that's right. This is a new Andrew. The dangerous side of Spotless.
I'm so excited. I
know.
Do I need to prepare in some way?
She's fanning herself. My goodness. Oh, wait, we're on YouTube. People knew I was lying. All right. Can I quickly something really big has happened in my life that is very relevant to things that we talk about a lot on this show. And as I was thinking about talking about it with you and our scrub jockeys, it occurred to me, maybe this is just karma after some conversations we had on the show a few months back. Because, Hannah, one of my favorite things, as you well know, about kind of cleaning or the things we talk about on this show, just like kind of upkeep of a home or whatever, is how things smell. I don't think I was buying a lot of Mrs. Meyer's products before we started this podcast, and then I kind of got into it, and they have all different kinds of smells. They have seasonal smells, whether I buy their stuff for cleaning dishes, I buy their stuff for cleaning my hands, whatever, various products. I'm a big fan of that. We've talked a lot about the laundry detergent that I choose. I've gone back to the stuff that really smells like really bright and clean, like my childhood smells. But my taste in these things kind of leans towards basic, like I told you, I got one of those, I don't know if it's Glade or Febreze, one of those plug it in things, and it makes my parts of my basement smell a little bit like a lobby of a mid-level hotel or something like that.
I believe you described it as suburban, and it was so perfect.
Yes,
I
exactly.
could picture it immediately.
Yes, that linen smell, that
Or
fake linen smell.
I think you also said like a townhome. And I was like, yes.
Yes, I might have said that because I bought the exact one that my friends who live in the townhome have. But anyway, the reason I bring up karma is because that plug it in Febreze thing that I have, I also tried to sort of sneak it past Genevieve because I wasn't sure if it was going to be too strong of a smell.
Oh my God, did you get caught?
No, I've slowly integrated into our lives, and now I just refer to it every now and then, and it's just our thing now. I was just so scared that Genevieve was going to smell a different. She's a little bit sensitive and quick to say no to some things, and I was worried that she was going to smell the smell in the basement and ask me to unplug it. So I was being very careful at first, only plugging it in at times when she wasn't around, and then sort of slowly integrating it into our, what did I call it? Like the olfactory form of our house or something like that. Profile, I think.
Profile,
the scent profile is what I was looking for. All of that is to say, Hannah, I'm not losing my sense of smell, but my sense of smell is getting all jacked up. And it's getting jacked up in a way that is especially affecting those types of products, probably the types of products that you buy that are very scenty, but in a modern, probably chemically way. And I think I don't have pure evidence of this yet, but I think it's because of one of the medications I'm on. I'm on one kind of weekly medication that's pretty strong, and it's for my rheumatoid arthritis, but it's used for a lot of other things too. I think that people who are going through various cancer recovery processes take this too. It's called methotrexate for whatever it's worth. And I don't know all of the ins and outs of it, but I did a little bit of Googling when I started to have some issues with my smell. I was like, is this making me... It's sort of changing the way things smell. Mostly, I think I've identified it as, like, again, these sort of soaps and things. They smell a little... They smell like a little bit of a chemically burny smell, sort of. And it's not consistent. And one thing that I've sort of noticed is... when it comes on, it took me a long time to sort of identify what was going on. So I'm still coming to grips with how to describe this to people. But it started with some organic smells, like if Genevieve was cooking upstairs, or if I had a pot of coffee brewing upstairs, or if, like, sometimes I prepare the coffee at night and she hits go on it. That's our usual routine. Like, if I'm in a different room and the coffee is going, I'm kind of far away from it. It doesn't smell like coffee to me. It smelled like cabbage, sort of, like not a very great smell. No offense to cabbage. But like cooking
I think
smells.
cabbage is aware. Cabbage knows.
Cabbage knows. And cabbage knows exactly its place in this world. And so I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. I'm like, why does the coffee smell like cabbage? And then I started talking about it more, and then sort of identifying it. And then these other smells that I say like kind of come from more of a chemical compound. I'm missing the floral sense of it, and I'm only smelling this sort of, again, almost a chemically burny smell, or an electrical burny smell or something. And when it goes away, I'm like, oh, I was in a pocket of my basement where I was sort of smelling that air freshener thing that I plugged in, but it didn't smell like air freshener yesterday. It smelled like that burny smell. And some of the soaps when I wash my hand, usually it's around the house, but I was at a little teriyaki joint the other day with Genevieve. I went in the restroom to wash my hands, and I'm like, oh, there's that burning smell again. I realized, oh, it's just the soft soap that they're using in here. And so it's kind of ironic that I lately have been so into these synthetic smells, and now they are abandoning me. And maybe it's my comeuppance for trying to pull one over on Genevieve with my little Febreze plug-in.
There's so much there.
There is. Sorry, I talk fast.
No, first of all, oh man, that sucks. There's nothing. So, anyone who has taken a medication or has had an experience, like a health experience, that changes the way you sense the world can understand what you're going through. And especially, I think it's one thing if you have maybe never had that sense, or that sense has always sort of been a little off. But when you've had the sense and then it changes, it's really strange, because you know how it's supposed to be, and then it's different. And it's almost like being homesick or missing something, and like there's just no way to get it back. Like you just can't. It's like there's no regaining it. I used to take a med for a while that made all carbonated beverages taste terrible. It just made carbonated beverages taste terrible. They just all tasted gross. And it was really strange. And it was like not at all comparable to what you're dealing with. But I remember that experience especially because when you know how something is normally, how it normally interacts with your body, and then when it doesn't do that, it's such a trip, because you're expecting something, and then it just doesn't happen, and you feel like a little betrayed by your brain, because you're like, oh, your brain is not sensing things the way it's supposed to be. It sounds too like you're, for whatever reason, because of this medication or whatever else, your like olfactory senses are picking up a lot more strongly on like the acid part, or like the sort of like acidic scent. Because the cabbage, it sounds like it's sort of like the acidic scent, or like on the other end, like the basic like sulfury, like the sulfuric sort of, like it's very like distilled down, you know, like to the most like essential parts of a smell, right? And like, because like you said, when you mentioned coffee, like coffee's a really acidic scent, but you usually pick up all of the other elements of that scent. You pick up like all of the other parts of coffee. You don't just pick up the acidic parts of it. But it sounds like you're mostly picking up like some of the, like just the acidic parts.
Maybe. It's really hard to describe senses,
yes,
you know?
It
and
is. That's true.
One thing that I've sort of noticed, and again, it could be one of those things where I'm convinced it has to do with this specific medicine. It could be something else. You know, I did have COVID for the very first time in September. I am very dubious that this is some sort of holdover from COVID because I know
That's a
COVID.
long time.
It's a long time, and it didn't affect me when I had it. You know, for this to kick in January, and I had COVID in September. I don't think that's it. It could be something else. There could be other environmental factors that have changed in my life. I got a gas stove. I don't think it has to do with that, but I was thinking about that last night. Like, I could have just latched onto this idea that it has to do with my medication, and it could be some other thing that changed in my life that I'm not really thinking about. But I did go online and search, like, methotrexate. Does it affect your sense of smell? And I did see some people, nobody described this exact thing, but I found myself in some message boards, which is always a good place to get your medical information. But people saying, hey, I think I might have body odor since I've started taking methotrexate. Does methotrexate cause body odor? And a bunch of other people saying, no, it doesn't. But for some people, it does affect their sense of smell. And it could make your sense of smell stronger. And so some people think that they stink more after taking the medicine, but they don't. They're just noticing their own smells differently.
Weird.
And I'm not experiencing that, luckily. I think that would kind of bother me if I didn't like my own smell. But it is just, I guess my one thing that I've been thinking about this in a lot of different ways, but one thing that's relevant maybe to this conversation and to people like a lot of our listeners, I think maybe I'd put your mom in this category, but certainly people we've heard from on the show who kind of have the absolute opposite tack that I do as far or opinion on these sort of fabricated scents in my life that I am drawn to. Like, I believe your mom was like, oh, that Mrs. Meyer stuff, it's too strong for me. And I've always assumed that for folks like that, it's too strong and too perfumey. And it may be for some people, but I think other people might just smell it differently, where they don't smell the perfumey thing that I like. They might smell more of the, whether it's acidic or chemically nature behind it. Like, this is all hitting us in different ways. I mean, I think of the cilantro. Are you somebody who likes the taste of cilantro? Yeah. But you've heard about the people who like, it's not like, oh, I don't like cilantro. Some people, their brains are just different and it tastes like soap to them. And it doesn't taste anything like soap to me, you know? So it's just like, it sort of taught me, a little bit of a lesson about like, okay, well, when we're having these conversations, like, not only might we have different opinions on this, our entire sense of this might be totally different.
Yeah, and a lot of it too is because scent is so tied to memory, to experience, right? It's the reason Keith doesn't like lavender is in part because I'm pretty sure, if I remember, he told me like that he just like had a roommate who only used lavender scented everything and used both artificial and essential oil lavender scent, and so it all sort of became jumbled in his brain, and kind of everything that fell into that bucket all became negatively associated, and so then it was sort of unable to be untangled from one another, which is fair. There's a lot of scents I don't like because they have.
I thought it was because his dad ran away to be a lavender farmer and raised a lavender family.
It didn't help, and every letter that he sent home without a single dollar of child support in it did have a lavender sprig.
It all smelled like lavender. Sorry to cut you off. I need to get
Sandy.
my really good joke in there. Sorry, what were you going to say? Do you remember what you were saying before I cut you off?
Oh, I mean, I have scents that are, there are scents that are so tied to things that are unpleasant. Actually, I remember my dad telling me one time there were these citrus air fresheners that they used to use in the jail where he worked. Oh, yeah. That he told me that citrus air fresheners to this day nauseate him immediately because he just used to smell them every day going into the jail restroom, which I'm sure was the site of many catastrophes. Yeah. And so I think, it's a good reminder that many of us are experiencing scent in a way that is made up of so many components. Whether it's how your brain physically processes, how your brain processes both physically and emotionally, what else it's being filtered through. Have you found anything that you like? Like, are there any of the fragrances in your life that you still enjoy? Or do you have safe ones?
I'm still just trying to find the contours of this thing to sort of figure out what I'm dealing with here. Because it's not consistent. Like, one thing I've realized is I'll have good days and bad days. And so there'll be like a regular day where I'm like, oh, I smell the air freshener. And I think, like, again, this has been sort of a slow burn that sort of came on. You don't notice it at first, and then you start thinking, but boy, why does the coffee smell weird today? And then you sort of dismiss it. Then you start to notice more and more patterns. And I'm even thinking like now I'm thinking about it a lot more. So I'm trying to figure out, first of all, how to describe it to people because it's very strange. And also just looking for patterns in my life. I was trying to like figure out, like I take this medicine once a week. Is it stronger the day after I take it? For a while, that was a theory. I don't think that's quite right. But like one thing I noticed is usually, like I say, it's more extreme on the sort of synthetic smells. But last night, you're going to be shocked to hear this, I was making myself a frozen pizza, something I do quite a bit these days. And I realized at one point that when I smell a pizza cooking, I have feelings about that. I think a lot of people do, right? And I love the smell of pizza, but also there's something about pizza being the ultimate comfort food for a lot of people like me because you ate it as a kid. You had pizza parties. You would have Friday night pizza at home in a movie, like we tie pizza, or, I do, and I think a lot of people do, depending on your upbringing, tie pizza to certain things. I'm also a very nostalgic kind of a guy. So yesterday, as I was making kind of a late night pizza, it took me sort of a while to sort of process that it was almost like I could smell the good old-fashioned smell of pizza trying to break through a little bit, if that makes sense.
Weird.
I kind of like came in, I'm like, something smells weird. And then I stopped for a second. I'm like, oh, that's nice. I smell the pizza. But it was sort of almost like underneath a cloud of a little bit of a burny smell. I keep saying burning, but it's not like burning toast. It's like a more of a, like you say, kind of a sharp, acidic kind of chemically smell. And so it was very strange for me.
So
I'm like,
your brain was like grabbing at the scent that it knew. It was like, oh.
Yeah, and I got just a little piece of it. So to answer your question, no, I haven't found any kind of, I haven't been able to like get to that step of like what works and what doesn't because it's not consistent right now. I don't know what's going on. I'm going with this theory that is connected to this particular medication. I could be totally wrong about that. I want to make that clear. And I do have a doctor's appointment tomorrow. So, I will, maybe get some answers. The doctor also might be like, no, never heard of that before. Let's keep an eye on things. And, I mean, when you start talking about your sense changing, I know that some people are like, you should get an MRI, like figure that out. I'll see what the doctor says. I don't think it's anything major. And I will just, I guess, maybe close, unless you want to talk about this some more, by saying I was describing this to another friend and he was like, God, I'm so sorry. That sounds awful. And I was like, oh, yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I am somebody who really likes scents in my life, and I very much connect them to memories. I'm a very nostalgic guy. But you know what I can do? I can get shit out of the bottom of my cluttered closet. I can go for a 3-mile walk like I did yesterday. About 6 months ago, I couldn't do any of these things. I was in so much pain. And I don't even think I quite realized how much pain I was in until like this past month has probably been the kind of clearest I've been of my RA symptoms since this all started.
Right.
I think late last summer, maybe mid last summer. And so what I'm going through right now is something that, it's not ideal, but it's also not like, I don't feel like it's the biggest burden that I could carry relative to other medical things I could be dealing with.
Right. It's the trade-off. And it's also, I mean, I know too, for you, like the inability to move around and do a lot of like independent of, like the pain itself, but also just the mobility part of it, the ability to just do stuff, to do things, and certainly relevantly to this show, like to putter for your mental health, right? Like that, if that's the trade-off, then that's pretty solid. It's not obviously ideal, but the ability to do the things you need to do. I know there's, whether it's, being held back mentally or physically, it's really hard to not be able to look around your house and see things you want to be doing and see chores that need to be done and not be able to do them and not be able to get the satisfaction of having them be done. Like I know that can be really, really challenging. Yeah,
and also I do think there's a fatigue that came along with it, although it turns out that I talked to my doctor about that, but that might have also had to do with me kind of changing drugs at the beginning of this and those leading to fatigue. But all I know was like in like August, I think maybe August and September were the height of my first bout of rheumatoid arthritis. And like, all I remember is just being miserable and not wanting to get up off the couch, and then getting up off the couch and just like groaning, and like literally if something dropped under the couch or dropped somewhere on the floor, like the idea of getting down on my hands and knees. I remember we had to replace our faucet in our kitchen, and like just the idea of crawling down. I think one time I got down there to help Genevieve with something, but she mostly had to do the project because I couldn't move. Like I just, and so, you know, I'm not super spry. I've never been a very spry guy, but the ability to pick up a penny that falls on the floor. Yes, I'm picking up those pennies, folks. Every penny counts.
You got to pay for the meds somehow.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I really appreciate that. So
yeah.
The idea of it being like, you know, I don't love this, what I'm going through right now, but it's also like, it's not even comparable to how the actual, ailment was affecting my body, I guess.
There does feel something a little karmic, though, that then... Like,
yeah, right, about me trying to sneak one past Vive.
That then the fates were like, aha.
But the thing is, I mean, that's the thing, too. Like, was I really... Because it was disingenuous in me trying to get Genevieve acclimated to the scent because I didn't want, like, an early no from her. But it did end up working out. It's not like I'm still lying to her. And by the way, this is literally like the only thing I've ever like not told Genevieve about. Like,
I love that this was your biggest con.
Exactly. I mean, that and my mistress. Those are the only things I haven't told her about. Now,
everybody has a second family.
That's right. I also work on
and a lavender farm.
Lavender farm is going to be our code word for stepping out of bounds. But anyway, yeah. So, but now I'm very, you know, Genevieve wasn't like, wait, what? We have a plug-in? Like, I keep it in my bathroom, and in a certain way, I think maybe what I did was very respectful to her wishes, which was, we're all happy now. We have a house that doesn't smell like cat litter in the basement, I hope, and everything's fine. And now, oh yeah, I don't see. That's the thing too. It's not everything. Like there are, like I'm trying to think. I was smelling something the closer I get to something, the more I can smell what it's supposed to smell like. So, for example, if I'm washing my hands in the sink, I'm like, ooh, I smell the chemically smell again. But then if I hold the soap up to my nose, like very closely, it smells like the soap is supposed to smell. It's kind of like
you're near scented.
I'm near scented. That's exactly right. All right.
Oh, this is a medical marvel.
Yeah,
this is fascinating.
Right. Well, I have progressive nostrils, so I can smell.
Little glasses.
I can smell both near and far now, so things are working out.
Straighten up and fly right. Straighten up and fly right. Straighten up and fly right. Cool down, Papa, don't you blow your top.
Hey, speaking of cooling down, Papa, and blowing your top, before we get into some of our emails and voicemails today, you mentioned the weather is turning nice. You sent me a text message saying that you were thinking about going full old man and cleaning out your garage. How's that project going?
Oh, man. Well, I haven't started it yet, but I do have designs. But first, I just have to say, I'm just picturing you with like a teeny tiny like nostril monocle, and I just can't get that picture out of my head.
I don't like it.
So when we had all that rain, I was downstairs working, and Keith came running downstairs, and he goes, "We have a problem," which is like, this is not a man who exaggerates. If he's coming downstairs and he's short of breath and says that to me, like someone has died. And I was just like, oh my God, what? And he goes, the ceiling is leaking upstairs. And I was like, oh, that is a problem.
That is a problem.
Running upstairs, and there's like, and it's like a drip. It's a little teeny drip, but it's
still
bad.
Though, yes.
It's bad. So there's a little part of our roof. So we've known we need a new roof for like a while. It's like one of those big things. It's on the list. And it's because there's a vent in our roof that has sort of scooched away from the roof itself, and there's a small slit. Keith had gone up there and caulked it previously, but I think it had worn away. We had just had the snow. So my theory was that the weight of the snow had pulled the shingle a little further away. Mm-hmm. So we could get up there and see from the inside where the little hole was and where the drip was coming through, and it was just so much water. It was an amount of rain that it's like Hollywood rain. It is cinematic rain.
Yeah.
You are soaked the minute you go outside. It is so much water coming from the sky.
Which isn't usually how the rain falls around these parts, but it's just been so heavy.
Yes, and it's so much all at once. And so the way that our attic is, it's not finished at all. It's the insulation is all just down on the floor of the attic, And so we kind of can't really get to the leak from the inside because the insulation is just all down, and it's asbestos, right? We just we haven't abated it. We're gonna probably have to do that at some point, but that's its whole own animal. So the only way to deal with it is to get onto the roof. So this is a whole thing that goes on that involves Keith climbing onto the roof in the pouring rain to do some rainy weather emergency caulking. But during all of this, we're out in the garage, and I felt very useful because I am an old man who has everything you could ever need out in our garage. Keith was like, okay, what do we have? What can we use? What can we use right now? And I was out there with my trench coat full of, I was like, oh, you need flex tape. I got flex tape.
Right,
you need, adhesive, like spray adhesive. I got that for you. Oh, you want
a
foam?
Rolex?
Yeah. I had everything. out there. I was like, oh, you want to try and use do you need twine or do you need rope? And I had it all. So that was great. But by the time we were done with this project, all of these supplies we were using to try and tighten up the roof were everywhere. And I just looked at the roof when we were all done, looked at the garage. A mess. It looked like a bomb had gone off. Between that and just using the garage for things over the past couple months.
A detached garage too, I should say, right? There's a difference there. Like we had a garage in growing up, but it was attached to our house. It was a sort of an extension that my parents built on. So I could walk out in the garage and it still felt like home. You know what I mean? Like it got some of that radiant heat or whatever. But a detached garage in this weather is very, very different, especially in the wintertime.
Yes. It's a detached garage that is built... I think the mail just got here.
I couldn't even quite hear that that's a dog barking. Wow, Lola going to town.
Yeah, I only mentioned it because it got really big really fast. So I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
Like the rain, yeah.
Yeah. But so it's a detached garage that it's built exactly like our home is. The way that the roof is built is in the exact same style. The siding is the exact same. It's basically just a big shed. And we never park the car in it because we're in the Northwest. That's not a thing we do. We have our tools. I have a potting bench out there. And the first couple years we lived here, I don't think Keith hardly ever went into the garage. He didn't have any use for it. He wasn't really ever in the yard that much. I was sort of always the one doing gardening. But now that we own this house, I feel like he uses it a lot more. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot harder for me to keep it because when it was just mine, I was keeping it tight. It was very clean because we just didn't have that much stuff, and it was mostly my stuff, and I was sort of in charge of the organization. But now that we're both using it, and now that we own the place, I feel like it's just become overrun, and I feel like such an old man standing out there, hands on hips, just annoyed at the state of it, and I can't find anything. And I used to have a system for how things were on these shelves, and now they're all over the place. But it's kind of one of those things where I'm not sure. I feel like if I bring it up with him, it's going to become an everybody project, which is fine. But then I know it's going to become. Then I feel like it's going to become a him project, which is also fine. But I don't really want to feel like I'm volunteering him to do it all, but I do feel like he's going to end up taking it over because it's the kind of thing that he would want to have a bigger hand in.
But do you feel like the balance of stuff has shifted as well? Like, do you feel like he's got more stuff that you would sort of put into the Keith category?
Not really. I mean, it's still mostly my gardening stuff. It's still a lot of tools and a lot of older stuff. And a lot of it's, there's things out there that he says eventually he's going to Craigslist. I don't know if that's ever really going to happen. And it's a lot of things that are both of ours, the grill, summer furniture.
Yeah, so that'll all come out once the weather changes for good.
Or it sort of lives out there generally.
Oh, the grill stays. You roll it out. You use it.
Yeah,
you roll it back
it kind of just hangs out in there, just so we don't have to worry about if it rains and stuff. But I just feel like there's not a lot of the organization out there is it's not temporary, but it's not thoughtful. Like it's just the shelving units that came with it. Like I didn't go out and buy new shelves for the garage. I used whatever was already there. He will probably want to go out and buy new shelves for the garage, which is not something that I prioritized.
Right.
And so it's things like that, right? And it's just like we just have a difference of how to manage those kinds of things. So I don't like it's one of those parts about living with someone where I could keep doing it the way I have been doing it, and I think that's fine, and it'll be work, but it'll get undone practically every time, we have something going on. Or I could loop him into it, and we could, like, deal with it together, but I know that then he's going to have really strong opinions, and he's going to end up probably, like, doing a lot more of it.
Well, can't you just, like, kind of, like, crack yourself a Miller Lite, just go out there, start puttering, and just, like, do you have to loop him in?
No.
Like, it could just be something that you just sort of like, it might end up being the type of thing you just find yourself doing. Like, you right now know it's going to be a project, but, I was mentioning that the other day, just like totally on a whim, just decided, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to take care of the stairwell right now. It's not raining, and took care of it. And, like, it's so strange. It's like, I don't know, 4 steps down and a little cement slab at the bottom of it, and then a grate where our sump pump is. And it's just so nasty during the winter that it took me 5 minutes to do it once it was dry the other night. Like 5 minutes. And then the next morning I opened it up and I'd forgotten that I had done it. And it felt the feeling I had when I opened up my back door and all of that detritus was gone. And the fact that I just did it because I didn't set aside time to do it. I just did it totally on a whim. And while I was doing that, I also took my broom and I stood on a chair and I knocked a bunch of those big clumps. You know how moss starts to really clump up on the roof, and then like birds will kind of grab it and then drop it down? We have like this sort of this temporary galvanized plastic wavy little roofy thing that covers up our stairwell here. Like that had those big chunks from all winter of this moss stuff, and I just got in a chair and like it's the type of thing that I'd been fantasizing about doing forever, but then I just got on a chair and I did, and again it was like a 5-minute thing and it's just done. So the garage to that point could be the type of thing where you're just like kind of out there and you're like, well, I'm just gonna put these pliers away, and the next thing you know you're like putting those screws in little jars that you're screwing up underneath the shelving units or whatever.
I feel like it's going to happen, probably in the next couple of weeks when I have to go, because I'm going to have to go buy my seeds for this season. I have to go out there and like sort of inventory what my seeds are looking like. And then I know it's going to be that like pulling of the sweater thread where I'm going to have to put all my seeds in order. Then I'm going to have to clear my potting bench. Then I'm going to have to put all the, canisters of spray things away. Then I'm going to have to move all of the insecticides over to one side. Then, and so I just know that it's going to end up. And then I will be out there all day, 100%. Yeah, because it's just going to get there.
Then it'll just feel good.
Oh, it's going to feel great. It's going to feel great. And there's a couple of little things like that I know that it's just going to be it's one of those times where I feel like some of the best cleaning projects are the ones where you've just been looking at it and you've been looking at it and then finally you snap. And it can wait no more. The other day I was so tired. So I don't know if I've ever necessarily talked about this. I am reasonably sure, I've never gotten tested because I've never actually had like good enough health insurance to do it. I'm reasonably sure I have narcolepsy. I just like fall asleep.
Really?
I'm dead serious. I just fall asleep whenever. Like I just am a desperately sleepy person. I could sleep 20 hours a day. It would not be a problem. Except
and you're on a pretty regular sleep schedule, right? You're not like me. I stay up way too late and then I struggle all day. But like it sounds like you have relatively good habits.
I mean, I could be sleeping at almost any minute. And I have nodded off during some very inconvenient moments in my life. And I just am I have like excessive sleepiness in the daytime. It's just nonstop. The other day I was about to fall asleep in the middle of the day when I really did not want to be napping, and I was about to fall asleep. And so instead of sleeping, I just like forced myself up and had had some caffeine, and made myself do chores instead of napping. But it was one of those times where I was so motivated to do anything to keep my eyes open and to stay vertical that I ended up knocking out some very strange little around the house chores that I'd been meaning to do. It was things wiping down baseboards, wiping down, like getting all the way inside with my little brushy, my favorite 5-tool brushy, inside all of the windowsills and inside all of our built-ins, just teeny tiny little detail work, anything to give me a reason to keep my eyes open. But then afterwards I felt great and I was marginally awake.
Yeah, sometimes things just happen on their own time, sort of. It's just like sometimes it can make me feel a little manic sometimes.
Yes.
I told you about like when that whole conversation we had about our vacuum attachments. That all started because I just with the help of a very strong marijuana strain, just like one night was like, oh my God, I gotta clean this office top to bottom. And it's like, why is this happening on a random Tuesday at like 10:30 at night? And sometimes that's just the way it works. Now, one theme that we've been talking about on the show a lot are the types of things that are a little bit more deliberate that I kind of brought up, and now I sort of feel like I don't know if this bit is starting to wear on people because I keep bringing it up so much, but this idea of things that we sort of let go on purpose for a while to let them get especially dirty so they'll be like really satisfying when we clean them. The first example I gave was like this very, very thin filter on the back of our dehumidifier in the basement. A little light goes on after so many hours of using it, and it says, you should change your filter now or clean it out. You don't change it, you just clean it out. And what I've learned is it's way more satisfying if I kind of let it go 2 cycles before cleaning it. Then I pull that thing out and I soak it in my sink and I see all the dirt come up from it. And I'm like, yeah, baby, this is why we do it. This is why we get out of bed in the morning. And I think do you remember you had an example of some things as well?
Oh, mine was the blades on the overhead fan.
Right, the fans.
That's a great one.
Yeah,
Yes.
and so
And then the listener had the one about the remote control at her parents' house, which is a really good one.
Yes, that she's like, she'd come home from college, I think, right, and clean it. It was so gunky.
Such a good one.
She said that she would learn that the numbers were not disappearing, were not rubbing off of the remote control. They were just getting buried under years of fingertip grime. Anyway, our friend Corinne has an example.
Hey friends, it's Corinne, listener number 87, and I thought of a task that I sometimes postpone to make it more satisfying. It is Swiffering in our master bedroom and closet. My husband and I shed a shocking amount of hair and lint. I could truly get the Swiffer out once a week, and I would be able to pick up like an appreciable amount of lint. But if I wait a month, the dust bunnies. It is just unbelievable and kind of gross, but also super satisfying.
And did she say also that it's kind of in a closet area, so you're not even seeing it all the time, so you can let it grow a little bit if you need to?
Yeah, that's permitted. I feel like that's an acceptable place to let the mess grow for your own satisfaction, because if you're doing it weekly, who will notice?
Oh, it's just got me. So many conversations on this show. Sometimes they remind me of good, satisfying cleaning moments, but then other times it just reminds me of things that are festering in my life. And I'm thinking about our bedroom is one of the hardest places to clean because half of the bedroom is one of the places where Genevieve is sort of just raccooning, sort of her side of the bed. We have
her bowerbird areas.
Yes, we have a small bedroom, and one of those where the I guess we have a queen size bed. It takes up the vast majority of it, so there's not tons of room on either side of the bed anyway. And then with her dresser in there, but then at her side of the bed, when I make the bed, and I'll give her credit, she makes the bed most days. But if I'm trying to make the bed, I have to literally just step through clothes and garbage and all kinds of stuff that she has on her side of the bed just to make the bed. And then when I think about that, I start thinking about all the dust bunnies that are under the bed right now. We have 2 cats, one who's sort of longish haired. And one time I was trying to get out of the house. I was trying to get out of the house. I was supposed to meet Genevieve. We're going to a concert or something, but I needed my earbuds so I could get on the train and listen to something and not be alone with my thoughts. And I knew that Bingo the cat had knocked my earbud case somewhere. Genevieve's like, I'm texting her. I'm like, I'm running late. I can't find my earbud. She's like, I heard Bingo knock them to the floor this morning. I'm like, well, okay. Well, then where are they? Like, that means anywhere. So I was on my hands and knees a few months ago, like looking for these things. And when you're on your hands and knees in a hurry to get out of the house somewhere, but you're like, oh God, it's awful under here. It's so awful under here. Cause I never get in that. The room is never clean enough for me to really clean it. You know what I mean?
That's bait. That you're being tested in that moment.
Yeah, it was really
bad. The Lord is testing you.
I had just taken a shower and I was ready to leave the house, and then I'm like, it's like a half hour later, I got obsessed with finding my headphones. I'm now sweating and covered in dust. I've been on my hands and knees in all these gross places in my house, and it was just like me in the back of Corinne's closet, just like collecting all of the dust balls.
And all the dust balls are under the bed, just like, hello.
God,
you don't have time.
Just haunting me. We got this this email, I should say, from Constance, listener number 15, by the way, Constance in upstate New York, who says, you asked listeners if there are any cleaning tasks that are deferred and then are so satisfying when they're finally clean. My washing machine recently broke, and a few days ago, my new washing machine was delivered. I knew ahead of time that in the few minutes between when the delivery people moved the old washer out and put the new one in place, I wanted to clean the area under the dishwasher. Before they arrived, I had paper towels and spray cleaner ready to go. As soon as they took the old washer out, I jumped into action to clean up the layer of accumulated lint, dirt, and oil where the old washer had been. It's extremely satisfying to clean this area since I only have access to it when my washer is completely removed. That's like how many times in a lifetime do you get to do that? Like, we're not buying new appliances all the time. It really is.
That's we did that when we got our new washer and dryer in. Keith specifically went and like asked the guys moving them. He was like, "Hey, can I get in? Can I get in there?" Yep. And the guy was like, "Yes." And then later I asked the moving guy, that's a pretty regular request, huh? And he responded that it definitely was. And most people want to get in there before you put the new one in. And that did not surprise me.
Remember I told you we got a new stove somewhat recently, and when they were installing the new one, they weren't putting it all the way in its place yet anyway, because we had to build some infrastructure around it. All of that is to say, so we actually had a gap in our kitchen where our old stove had been for maybe 24, 48 hours. I can't recall. But when they pulled the old one out, I kind of warned them. I'm like, this used to be a rental unit. God knows what happened in this house before we owned it. Like, I don't know what's going to be under there. And they both looked down. They're like, oh, that's not bad at all. And the other guy was like, oh, yeah, like, especially given what you just said. He's like, I pulled one out the other day. It was wet under there for some reason. And like, he was like, and wetness wasn't the only thing. It sounds like it was just like a biosystem under there that, I'm making Hannah literally physically sick with this story. But yeah, so I felt kind of proud.
Wet?
That's a question that nobody will ever know, and nobody ever wants to know the answer to, but it sounds awful.
Do you find that having pets means that you entirely too often find yourself asking, why are you wet? Because I feel like I have to ask.
It feels like more of a dog thing.
Maybe so. It's really too frequent in my life that I'm asking, why are you wet? Or why is this wet?
I will say this about Bingo, our younger cat. When we got him, we didn't realize he was going to be kind of a long-haired cat. Now, I don't even know if I would describe him as a long-haired cat. He's got a big, poofy tail. He's a Siamese-looking cat, like a color point cat, I think they call him. And he's got a very long-haired, poofy tail. His fur, though, is actually, I would describe it as more like medium length now. It's not quite as long as we thought it was going to be at one point during his, like, kittenhood. But I was worried because I knew friends who had like legit long-haired cats, and they had to sometimes, they had to keep wipes on hand to help clean the dingleberry situation. Mm-hmm. That's a medical term. But I think most people know what I'm talking about. And I was just like, one of the reasons I have cats is because I don't want to do that.
You like the whole box thing. You're very into pooping in boxes.
Again, I'll clean out the box. That's fine. But like, I don't want to be wiping you afterwards. I don't have kids. And
it's an angel that poops in a box.
And clean. Cats are self-cleaning. That's a big appeal. And I will give my bingo boy credit. He is one clean cat. He is so fastidious. Yes, he spends so much time cleaning himself. We have no issues with him.
He's your son. He clearly takes after you.
That's right. He learned it from watching me. He also plays way too much Minecraft.
How is he at darts, though, is the real question.
Well, he likes to sit under the dart board, which I do not like at all. But the only time I have to ask him why he's wet, I know the answer is because he's been cleaning himself. Sometimes he cleans himself so much that it's like his side will be a little bit damp. But like, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, that's not bad. As long as it's a good damp.
Yeah, it's a good damp.
As opposed to a mystery damp.
And I don't know if this is going to pay off or not, but I told you at the top of the show that I think I stumbled on, this might have even really been the thing that was in the back of my mind the whole time when we were talking about these sort of deferred gratification or delayed gratification cleaning projects. And the one that struck me the other day, I was like, oh, this is it. This is sort of, in my mind, sort of the holy grail of this. But I mentioned I'm kind of a bad, dangerous boy here. You don't want to overdo this.
Andrew Danger Walsh.
That's what they call me. It's the lint trap in the dryer.
That is actually dangerous, Andrew Walsh.
No, that's legitimately dangerous. I don't do it on purpose, but I will say I think that's the one that, like, I was like trying to think of the perfect example. I think that's the perfect example because I know you're supposed to clean the lint trap after every use. And believe it or not, I've gotten pretty good at doing that. Like, we have a new washer and dryer that's only like a year or so old at this point. And so I empty that thing every time. But I think I must have just forgotten a couple of times. And it wasn't like it was building up for a month or something, but I opened up the lint trap. Ours is kind of a weird one. You pull it out and then you open it like a book sort of, and then all the lint is sort of on the inside of it. And it was that really thick, puffy, you want to make a bed out of it amount of lint. And I pulled that all off and I was like, oh, this is the dream. I know it can be a fire hazard if you leave it in there too long. Have you ever been in an Airbnb or some sort of other common space like that, even a relatively clean one or well-kept one, and then you pull out like those people's dryer trap and it is like it's never been changed in like years?
Yes. So, yes. And it's true. It is immensely satisfying. I have made it a practice to do it every time I moved into a place. Like when you move into a new apartment, that's one of the first things you do. Yeah. And when I used to have to use communal laundry, obviously sometimes you wind up and you don't have control over, you know, who's done it and who hasn't. So doing it preemptively at like the laundromat or wherever.
Oh, that's right. You even have to do it at a laundromat. I mean, I use laundromats for a big chunk of my life, and that's right. And that's always it's a little less satisfying because it's not your clothes. And there's a little bit of an ick factor there, even though presumably it's clean.
Although sometimes it is good. You never know.
Yeah.
But while I love crime, I love robbery, I love fraud, I love breaking rules, I love danger. I cannot abide by this because not only can you start a fire, you also don't get as good of service. You get your clothes are not going to be as clean or they're not going to be as dry, and this is how you get sour laundry as well.
Yes,
so this is not a good practice. However,
it's a waste of energy too if you have to run it longer. Yeah,
correct. However, it is true if you go to like a communal laundry and you happen to get a dryer where nobody has been cleaning out the trap and you do that, it is, I mean, you ever do it and you pull it all in one sheet?
Oh, yes.
Ooh.
Yes. That's what I mean. Like, I think when I was a younger person, maybe using communal laundry, but in an apartment building kind of thing. I don't exactly know my whole journey with laundry. It doesn't matter. But I feel like there were times in my life where I was more reckless. I didn't think about these things. It didn't really matter. You let it build up. And it was more of a common occurrence that I would be like peeling a big, I almost said frothy. All right, let's calm down. A big,
bring it down a notch.
Puffy sort of bed of lint, and it is very satisfying. These days, as a responsible, home-owning, 48-year-old middle-aged man, I want the most out of my dryer. I don't want to accidentally cause some sort of a fire, and so I really do keep that thing clean. But the difference of satisfaction between cleaning it out after drying one medium load of laundry, and you're just sort of like, I guess I'll just sort of like try to get this around the corners and kind of whiff it off of there a little bit, like, and you end up with a tiny. It's just like
you
so
get in there,
not
it's suddenly you need
satisfying.
tools. You're like,
Yeah, to get into the little tiny cracks. It's so not satisfying. But if you honestly forget for a few rounds and you pull that thing out and it's all been your laundry and you peel it out, I don't know, man.
That's the thing though. I never forget. It is like, I feel like, I don't think I ever forget. I'm pretty sure I do. I feel like it is a part, for me, it's part of the reward of doing laundry is that I get to do it every time. I get every time. And like, because sometimes, especially because I usually get to do the towel laundry, it's usually pretty, especially, I mean, I have a dog. So like sometimes, and so I remember at one point when I lived with a dog and then we adopted a second dog many, many, many years ago. I remember the moment of doing like the bed sheets and some blankets when we had gone from one dog to two dogs, and the doubling of dog hair and doing the lint trap that one time and realizing, oh yes, we have literally twice as much dog hair now.
Yeah.
And it was both alarming, but a little delightful. I actually did kind of love that moment. And it truly was twice as much in that instant. And it felt great.
While we're on the topic of laundry, and I realize we've gone kind of long here today, but I do want to get this voicemail in from listener Carol. She has some thoughts on laundry, but actually 3 thoughts on things we've talked about. Let's break these down one at a time.
3 things in 2 minutes. This is Carol from Philly. I don't have a listener number, but I'm a fan of primes.
Oh, yeah.
So 71 or 73 is available. I'm down for that.
Okay, can we take a look here? I forgot to open up the official Spotless number listener sheet. Let's see here. What were the options? 71
71.
Or what? 71 is open.
There you
Let's
go.
do that. Right
Boom.
in between listener number 65, our friend Abby in Amsterdam, and 82, Stephanie in Brooklyn, we have Carolyn in... Wait, Carolyn, right? No, Caroline? I need to hear the beginning of your voicemail again. I do not like mispronouncing people's names.
3 things in 2 minutes.
It's Carol.
This is Carol.
It's Carol. It's not Carol or Carolyn or Caroline. What am I doing there? Carol in Philly is listener number 71. Okay, let's pick up on your 3 things here. I don't, and I'm going to need your help with this one, Hannah. I don't remember what this first one is a reference to.
71 or 73 is available. I'm down for that. First item, bergamot. The T is pronounced. It is a scent that's used in detergents and also a flavor that's used in Earl Grey tea. It's sort of a citrusy, orangey flavor.
Why did that come up?
Because I was mentioning the scent, because we were talking actually several weeks ago, to your point earlier about how it's really hard to describe scents.
Yes.
And I was talking about helping, or like, especially people who are raised, socialized male, don't often have a really wide vocabulary for fragrances. They often aren't really taught to be discerning in what different florals or different spices smell like. And one of the scents I mentioned was bergamot, I guess, and I couldn't remember.
Did we mispronounce it, or
no?
You just couldn't think of the term?
So I mentioned that I don't know how it's pronounced, that I've never known how it's pronounced because I've only ever read it. It looks like bergamot because
okay, sure.
M-O-T. It looks, if it's French, it looks like it should be bergamot, but she says it's bergamot. The T is pronounced, and I will believe her.
I just thought of a trick. Was it you? No, it must have been Genevieve telling me there's a trick of the trade when it comes to French. You never pronounce the last letter, so if there's an E after the T, you do pronounce the T, whereas if the T is the last letter in the word, you don't pronounce it. I don't know what I'm talking about. Nobody listen to my advice. I don't know French.
I took French for like 7 years and I still couldn't tell you. So
Does that sound right? No, okay.
No.
Just listen to Carol. Listen to Carol. Don't listen to me.
But here's the other thing. It's also when it's borrowed words, all the rules are out the window because we all have just readopted them and,
Anyway, I don't.
Yeah.
Next question.
Yeah.
Second, the name of the thing that makes soaps work and bind dirt to a detergent is called a surfactant with the letter R. And my hottest tip.
Okay, did you know that?
I did not. So that's another one for me because I couldn't remember what it was that was actually in soap that makes them sort of bind and do their soapy thing. And I couldn't remember if it was a sulfactant or a surfactant, and it is a surfactant. And then because of this call, I went and looked a little more because I knew that they do their soapy thing, but I didn't know exactly what it was.
The soapy thing.
Yeah, the soapy thing. And so they adsorb, which I guess is different than absorb, between a solution and a different phase, such as a gas or a solid. So basically they exist in between a gas and a solid, and they...
It's a shark. Sorry. That was the worst thing I could have possibly said.
They're at number 3. But they're detergents.
Somewhere between a gas and a solid. So awful. So awful. My apologies.
This has been such a good show.
I apologize to you and Carol and the audience for that one. The last thing on Carol's list is something that we actually talked about a couple of weeks ago. Your mom tipped us off to this, but I think it's really good to reiterate this. It's related to Genevieve is using a more enzyme-based and better for the environment as far as the way it's packaged laundry soap now. It comes in a small, like, metal bottle with a tiny little rubber cup that you measure out the detergent in, and I was complaining that cup gets all, like, gross, and you set it back down in the laundry room shelf, and it's, like, dripping with soap, and then I had to find a little bowl to put it in and everything.
Life hack, whatever. Avoid a gunky laundry detergent cap or cup or whatever. Measure your detergent, pour it in the load, throw the cap in the water with the clothes or with the towels, whatever. It'll clean itself while your clothes get clean. If it's really gunky to start with, you might want to soak it in the water a bit so you don't get like chunks of soap stuck on your clothes. But this works great. I actually use sheets these days, and the ones I'm using seem to work for me. I don't know. Your mileage may vary, but avoid the gunky cap. Throw it in the water. Let the washing machine do the work. Thanks for the pod. Love you guys.
Now, I mentioned this to Genevieve, and she loves a life hack like this, and she loves her new laundry soap. So she was very excited to learn about this, and she did it, and she reported back. She said it worked great. We got rid of the little I can't remember the thing that I said that we used to keep the little cap in, not a bowl, but a ramekin, thank you. And now we've gotten rid of the ramekin on the shelf, and Genevieve is delighted by it. One thing I had a question for you. I don't know if you can answer this for Carol or not, but has this been like a long-standing life hack, even for like old school plastic bottles that we're just applying now to these newer ones? Or the way Carol makes it sound is like this is just the way you should have always done it.
I don't know this. I was trying to figure this out too. I can't imagine it is because I don't. If you were washing your laundry on hot water, I feel like there are some detergent caps that could not have handled it.
Yeah. Yes.
I have to assume.
Yes. Yeah. Good point.
I usually wash mine on cold. Sometimes I forget, and hot water's the default. So if I forget to turn it over, sometimes I accidentally wash things on hot. But like, I don't know. I was trying to think about this because also not every detergent has the cap thing that goes on top. So I think the Dirty Labs one is the one that's the most noticeable because it's the rubber beaker that sits right on the top.
And it's a small little guy.
It's really small, which also does make it feel like when you're filling it and then you dump it in, such a small amount of soap has actually made it into the drum.
Yeah,
So
that's a good point.
dumping the rest in or dumping the whole cup in does make sense because you're getting all the soap.
Yeah.
So that does make sense because it is hyper concentrated. So I would be more easily convinced that this is a newer hack for hyper concentrated soaps.
I think you're right.
But I don't know. I don't know
for
and
sure.
How do so many people know this and we didn't know this? And it's in such small print on their website. I mean, maybe it's on the bottle too. But like, I also had that Dirty Lab stuff and I did not. But maybe it's because I never in my life have I actually read the instructions on laundry soap because I know how it works.
Yeah. But do you?
But do I?
But do you, Blanche? Do ya?
Got your chains.
What was I? Was I just doing Bringing Up Baby? I don't even know what. Not Bringing Up Baby. Whatever happened to Baby Jane?
I feel like I'm doing George Costanza doing whatever that.
I think I've never even seen the Baby Jane movie, but I'm pretty sure isn't I don't know. But you do, Blanche. I don't even know what I'm doing. We got to get out of here. Hannah, this was lots of fun. Any final thoughts before they don't let us back on the internet?
I mean, we're already banned, I'm sure.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Well, you know where to find us. We're on YouTube now if you want to watch the video of today's show. spotlesspod@gmail is our email address. You know what? I got an old-timey radio guy who's going to tell you all the different ways you can get a hold of us and join the fun. Hope you all have a good time in the nice weather if you're out in our part of the world. Don't worry, the bad weather will come back, and then it'll go away again, and we're all going to be fine. Until the next time we talk, which will be in exactly 2 weeks. Hope you guys have a great time. We'll talk to you then.
You've been listening to the Spotless Podcast. If you have a question for Hannah and Andrew or some cleaning advice, call the Spotline at 508-HOW-WASH. That's 508-469-9274. You can also email them at spotlesspod@gmail.com. We'll be back soon. But until then, always remember, life is messy, but it doesn't have to be.